Hi, this is Nikki Flynn, and I am going to be talking about copyright and the computer regulations governing technology, our Module 12 case study. So, Section 1, summary of the case, who's involved. We've got Mr. Sample, the principal, Mrs. Lynn, who is the library and media specialist. We also have Mrs. Brandon, a fourth-year teacher who is new at St. Regis. We have Mrs. Williams, who is an experienced teacher who has only taught at St. Regis school. And then we have Mrs. Evans, the PTA president. When and where is this taking place? It is St. Regis School, which is in a rural town called St. Regis. It's a K through 8 building. And this is Mr. Sample's fourth year of being principal. So, what has happened? So, the school purchased 4 different software programs to use on 20 computers in their computer labs with funds that they got through PTA fundraising. The teachers are wanting to use programs on the computers in their classrooms, not just in the computer labs. So, Mrs. Lynn, who is the library media specialist, copies the commercial computer programs onto blank CDs and distributes them to teachers so that they can use them in their classroom. Mrs. Williams and some other teachers at the school are delighted to get their copies, and they are using the copied software programs in their classrooms. However, Mrs. Brandon, who has worked at other school districts before, recognizes that this could be a violation of copyright policies, so she goes to Mr. Sample and lets him know. Mr. Sample tells Mrs. Lynn to stop copying the software programs and to collect all of the ones that are distributed because of copyright concerns that can affect the school and her as well. But Mrs. Lynn voices her opinion and the opinion of the PTA president, Mrs. Evans, that because they have limited funds, they need to stretch the funds. Nobody will know that they're doing it. She doesn't see a problem with it. She says that students deserve the best, and she is saving money for the school that parents worked hard to earn. So there are some legal and ethical issues. Some of the legal issues is that the computer software copyright violations, only a single backup copy can be made according to Simpson 2002. We also have the U.S. Copyright Act of 1976 and the amendments that were issued in 1980. We have to ensure that we are following the software's copyright page and license restrictions, according to Inghagen 1997. Fair use policy does not apply in this situation. Teachers not knowing and understanding the copyright rules and regulations is also an issue. And of course, funding of public schools is also something brought up. Some ethical issues, teachers knowingly breaking copyright rules and doing it anyway, getting the PTA involved and breaking copyright rules, and then Mrs. Lynn threatening to tell the community members about not using funds appropriately. There are some possible harm caused by the issue, so relationships among staff members and with the principal, and then there are some legal implications as well. In order to synthesize this into a sentence, I said that a limited school budget has prompted a St. Regis school staff member to copy computer software programs, which violates copyright laws and creates legal ethical issues for all staff members and the school, therefore not promoting the well-being of the staff and students. Some of the facts, the people, there are approximately 420 students in the school. There is a small staff size of teachers. The parents and PTA, they rely on them for funding. Mr. Sample is a newer principal. Some of the unknowns with the people are like the race, gender, political affiliations, norms, and customs of the population. The place, of course, is St. Regis School, which is a K through 8 building in a rural area. It's a small town. It's 25 miles from a larger city. There's only 2 grocery stores and a few small businesses in the town that they rely on for supplies. Some of the unknowns is like the condition of the building and materials that they have at the school. The program, this is a public school, K through 8 grade level. There's only one special education teacher for grades K through 4 and another one for grades 5 through 8. There's only 2 teachers per grade level. They have a shared computer lab with 20 new computers they bought with PTA funds. Some of the unknowns is what their curriculum program is. Do they have an acceptable use policy? And what kind of school trainings do they do? So there is some potential legal implications for the school and staff members in regards to violating copyright laws. There's also potential for staff relationships to be broken, which puts the school climate in jeopardy. Fines for copyright infringement can be as high as $150,000 for each occurrence and up to $250,000 if computer software is involved, according to Simpson 2002. So those are some of the damages. Some of the stakeholders involved are administrators, teachers and staff, parents and community members, board members, and superintendent. Communication. Board members, superintendent, and some teachers in the building who have copies of the software have not been notified. They're not aware of the situation yet. And then I will speak with Mrs. Lynn and Mrs. Evans to learn more, but at this point, I can definitely make a decision based on the information known. So first, one option that I have is to take no action and do nothing at all about what's happening. Some of the pros of that is that teachers would be able to use the software in their classrooms. Mrs. Lynn would be appeased, and the PTA would appreciate the stretching of the funds. However, the list of cons is a lot larger, so it puts the school in jeopardy of legal action because of copyright infringement. Mrs. Brandon would be upset because I ignored her complaint. I'm not promoting the well-being of my staff. I could create tension between my staff for differences in opinions. I'm setting an example that staff does not need to follow copyright laws, and there's a lack of communication with all of the stakeholders. Option 2 would be to take a more liberal approach. So I would speak with Mrs. Lynn individually and discuss the copyright laws that are being breached, along with possible consequences for the school because of that. I would also go over the district's acceptable use policy. Then I would collect and destroy all of the software copies that were distributed to teachers and conduct a staff meeting and training to update the staff on the district's acceptable use policy. I would also meet with the PTA to discuss any opportunities for additional fundraising to buy more software needed that teachers are requesting. Finally, I would update and revise the acceptable use policy for the school if necessary. So a lot more pros with this one. I would have communicated with all members involved and staff. I would have staff training to prevent future incidents. I would look for opportunities to create additional funding for the school. I would restore and preserve relationships among staff. I would update and review school policies and promote the well-being of students and staff. As a con, it would take time to make sure that I thoroughly communicate and review all of the policies and procedures. Some other options to think about, I could consider reprimanding and disciplining Mrs. Lynn and all the teachers who accepted copies of the software. And the pro of that is that the teachers would be scared to do something similar in the future and hopefully stop the copyright violation. But the con of that would be that it would create poor relationships with my staff. I could also consider allowing Mrs. Lynn to copy the software and distribute it to any teacher who wants it and tell Mrs. Brandon to just ignore what's happening. The pro of that is that it wouldn't cost any money to buy more software for the school and that teachers could use the software in their classrooms. However, the con would be that this would cause legal issues for the school and myself and create tension between the administration and staff. So after reflecting on all of these options, I would choose option two because it's the best outcome for all parties involved. All types of the creative options have been considered, but option two takes into consideration the concerns and cares of all stakeholders. It keeps the school and staff members out of legal trouble. It trains the staff on copyright laws and the district's acceptable use policy to prevent future violations. And it also helps maintain relationships among the staff and the administration team, and all stakeholders get communicated with. So, step one of my plan is to meet individually with Mrs. Lynn in my office privately to explain copyright laws and the district's acceptable use policy, gather information from her about how many copies were made, who received them, and any additional information I need to know, warn her about possible consequences of her actions to the school and herself. Step two, I would gather all the copied software and destroy it, communicate with all stakeholders involved in the situation, meet with the school board to explore the district's acceptable use policy and make any updates if necessary. Step three would be to provide training to all staff about the acceptable use policy for the school and the copyright laws, communicate clear expectations going forward, and warn staff of potential consequences for the school and staff if violations occur again in the future. Post expectations in computer labs and teacher workrooms. Step four, I would meet with the building teachers to discuss computer lab schedules in order to maximize student work time with technology equitably and fairly, get teacher feedback for other ideas or possibilities. Step five, I would meet with the PTA to discuss additional fundraising opportunities to raise funds to purchase additional software for individual classroom use and look into grants or other funding options. And then step six, I would monitor the effectiveness of the policy in place, meet with teachers to gather feedback, and make changes if necessary. So hopefully the outcome would be that all the staff would comply and follow through with the outlined expectations in the future to promote the well-being and success of each student and adult. This would be used as a learning experience, and the school would move forward in a positive direction. Positive relationships between staff and administration would be maintained. Plan B, though, if that wasn't the case, I would create a community of teachers in the building, along with outside administration, to create a plan to effectively avoid copyright law infringements in the future and reach out to the high school in my district to see what's working at their building. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I enjoyed taking the class, and here are my references that I used.